Thank you, Presiding Officer. Delegates, it's a great honour to host you here, and I am thankful for the journeys that you've made, and especially to those who have travelled from far and wide. We're very honoured to have the High Commissioner, Navi Pillay, to have Professor Ruggie, and obviously to have former President Mary Robinson. It's a great privilege. It is a pleasure here to host you in our Parliament. It was 300 years in abeyance, and we seek not just to take responsibility for our own land, but to play our part as our small nation in making the world a better, safer and juster place. And it's a privilege, therefore, that this is the first United Nations conference that we've had, that it should be on the issue of human rights. And it's correctly not just focusing on the rights of an accused or anyone else in a criminal trial, because human rights are much, much wider, as we all know. There is the right for your kinfolk to have enough food to eat. There is the right of your country not to disappear under rising sea levels. These rights are universal and they are inalienable. They need to be sustained and promoted by nations large and small, and indeed the needs of the South must be one of the causes of the North. So, as I say, that's why it's a privilege to host you here. The protection and promotion of human rights is at the very heart of all that we, the Scottish Government and members of the Scottish Parliament, do in this chamber. All legislation passed by this chamber must be compliant with the European Convention on Human Rights. And the same is true of everything that the Scottish Government and other Scottish public authorities do. As a nation, we agree on the principle of ensuring that Scotland is inclusive and welcoming, and that our legislation and behaviours, and those who work within it, are consistent with the principles of justice and human dignity. Scotland does have a long tradition of stimulating debate on international human rights, from the thinkers of the Enlightenment back in the 18th century here in Edinburgh, through to the establishment of the Scottish Human Rights Commission in 2008, and as with Lord Wallace, I pay tribute to Professor Miller. The Commission's recent gaining of Grade A status was something that we took pride in as a government and as a nation. And in these times of economic uncertainty and indeed in many places austerity, it is more important than ever that human rights are recognised, respected and upheld. It may come as a surprise to some of you that the great apostle, or perceived as the great apostle of capitalism, Adam Smith, in The Wealth of Nations, stated that no society can surely be flourishing and happy, of which the far greater part of the members are poor and miserable. And as members of this institution, we should remember that, because Adam Smith is buried but 250 metres from here in a church at the Canongate. We would all wish to live in a flourishing and happy global society, one in which governments, aided by business and organisations of the kind represented here today, work towards taking people from across the globe out of the poverty and misery in which far too many of them live. In a globalised world, the challenges will be to enable economies to flourish, but not at the expense of human rights of the poor, the weak and the dispossessed. Climate change is a particular threat to the most vulnerable across the world. We in Scotland are determined to mitigate the damaging effects of climate change on the most vulnerable people in our global society, and the Scottish Government is therefore backing a new generation of renewable power resources which will reduce our carbon footprint dramatically. And we were delighted when this chamber passed the Climate Change Bill in 2009, which set a world-leading target to reduce emissions by Scotland by at least 80% by 2050, and I and my colleagues believe that this is an example that should be set and followed. So in closing, I would like to say that it is a great pleasure to have hosted this first ever United Nations event. It is a matter that I look forward to being able to share with you. Some of you will be attending, hopefully, a dinner at the Castle tomorrow, and we can continue our conversations there. We are proud that you have chosen to come to our nation, and I think that it's important that I should perhaps just end with the words of our famous Scottish bard Robert Burns, who said that it's coming yet for all that man to man the world o'er, shall brothers be for all that.